Ciao, I'm Mary Ann Esposito. Today on Ciao Italia, fill your belly with panzerotti. Today I'm in a party mood. Yes, because I am going to be making carnival food for you. Yes, and we're going to start out with something that's called panzerotti palermitani, and it comes from Sicily. And I say carnival food because this is the kind of thing that you would have just before Lent, or you would have it for any kind of a fun activity. And panzerotti translates to little bellies from pancia, which means stomach. So we're going to start out by making a dough where we're going to encase some wonderful filling. So here we have 2½ cups of flour in a bowl. But before we get going with that, we have to talk about yeast. So we're dealing with dried yeast, and we need a teaspoon of yeast in a ½ cup of warm water. How warm is the water? The water should be between 110, 115, otherwise it will kill the yeast. So use an instant read thermometer to gauge that. So once you have the water at the correct temperature, you want to add the yeast to the bowl and just let it dissolve. You can stir it around, let it dissolve. And I like to use, sometimes I use fresh yeast for this, in which case I would use even less because fresh yeast, a cake of fresh yeast, is much more potent. But it's hard to find today, and so dried yeast is the way to go. So we have our yeast in water, in warm water. And then in addition to that, you're going to want to have a ½ cup of warm milk, same temperature, about 110, 115 degrees. So our flour is in the bowl. And then we want to add with that some sugar. So about 1½ tablespoons of sugar mixed in with the flour, and some salt. So a good teaspoon or so of salt goes in. You could do this in a food processor if you wanted to as well. And just mix that all around so it's just well incorporated. Once you have that done, then you can combine these two. You see how the yeast now has started to just look a little chalky. So I'm going to mix these two things together, the yeast and the milk. And I'm going to add with it about 3 tablespoons of softened butter. So I'm just going to add the butter in little bits. You could use olive oil for this if you didn't want to use butter. And now we add the milk and the yeast mixture. So we're going to mix this into a dough. And I just have some extra flour at the ready, just in case I need more flour. If the dough seems like it's a little bit too soft, I can always add more. So you get it into a ball, something that you could knead on a board. You take it out. And I'm just going to flour my hands a little bit here. Yes, this is a perfect carnival food, but it's perfect for any time, really. And I like to do this for a party because you can make them in small turnover sizes. You can make them large. They're like a little sandwich, really. A little bit more flour. And once you get it into a nice soft dough, then you want to let this rise. Oh, I would say it's going to take about 45 minutes or so for it to come to be double in volume. And here's a bench knife. You can always use that to help you scrape up the bits of dough that are on your board. You'll know it's right when the dough is not sticking to your hands. So just continue adding a little bit more flour on your board until you've got that just right, what I say, Goldilocks consistency. It's not too wet and it's not too dry. It's just right. A little bit more flour, and then I think we've got it. Okay, so there's a nice rounded ball of dough. So you put it back into the bowl that it was in and cover it either with a towel or with some plastic wrap like that. and you set it aside. Well, you know, when you do a television show, you always have to have swap outs of what you're doing because you have such limited time to do it in. So my daughter Beth made the risen dough for me. So Beth, where's the dough?
Here's the dough, Mom. How does it look?
Well, let's see. We'll know with the finger test. It looks good because those two indentations stay there. Very good.
Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome, Beth. Thank you. All right, so now here we have that nice risen dough. You see how light and fluffy it is? Very soft. Beth got up at 4 o'clock this morning to do that for you. So now we can just knead that for a few minutes just to distribute all of those little yeast cells that are in there. And it really smells very yeasty. Okay, so that's looking good. So once you have the dough, then you want to use small pieces at a time. Take this and set it aside. And again, on your floured board, you want to flatten that out. This is often, you know, besides being a carnival food, this is often thought of as just called a street food because, you know, when people are out reveling and they're in masks like I just showed you and they're having a good time, they just want to get something that's grab and go. And this is the perfect thing. Now I want you to see just how beautiful that dough is. It stretches beautifully. Beth did a great job with this because it's easy to roll out. It's not, the dough isn't springing back towards me. If it was springing back towards me, I would know that that's an indication that it did not rest long enough. It didn't relax the gluten long enough. But this is perfect. So I can roll it out with ease, no problem. So once you have it like that, you want to have a tray ready with some parchment paper on it. Because these are going to be baked in the oven at 375. So we have a variety of cookie cutters now that you can use here. I'll get that for you. So you have options. You can make them various sizes like I said. So let's use, this is about a 4-inch cutter. So you can cut some that size if you wanted to. And then what you do with the extra dough is you just take those scraps, gather them up again, and re-roll them. Okay, so here are our circles. And now we have to work with the filling. There are a variety of fillings you could use for the panzerotti. So this is a savory, and it could be meat, ground meat of some sort. It could be herbs and cheese. Today we're going to do it with mozzarella and tomato. So I don't know if you've seen these lately, but these are called pearls. They're just little balls of mozzarella cheese. And they're perfect for doing the panzerotti because they're small. We don't have to cut them up or anything. So you can find them in your grocery store. Just look for mozzarella pearls, which is just cow's milk cheese. So now with the pearls, we want some oregano. So we want dried oregano. And here it is. And dried oregano is one of those herbs that Italians will use for some tomato-based dishes. They use it sparingly in other dishes, but they never overpower things with oregano. And it's really the only herb that they use dried. And when I'm in Italy, I usually buy it, see, like that, in a bag. And then I bring it home, and then I just kind of shake it down at the base, and then I can just grab the little leaves, and then I put it in whatever I'm cooking. So we've got some oregano, dried oregano in here. And then we want some tomato sauce. So here we have some fresh tomato sauce. Now you don't want to overdo this with the tomato sauce because it all goes squirting out of the dough. So just enough to coat those mozzarella balls, see? And then you can always serve extra tomato sauce on the side. And then we want a little bit of salt and a dash of pepper. And that's all there is to it. Now, if you like more oregano, you could add it. You don't want to use oregano, you can use something else, basil. So now that you have that, you set that aside, and now you can work with doing the, forming the panzerotti. So here are those rounds. So I'm going to move this over here so you can see. You just want to take, I use a little tiny spoon for this. You just want to take a little bit and place it in the center. You just add enough so that you're going to be able to turn the dough over it. So then I take a little bit of water. Let me get a brush. Just a little water, and just go around that edge, see, like that, because that's going to help me maintain that being closed. And then you just lift off one side, fold it over, press down, really press down. And then with a fork, just go around the outside, see, like that. And that gives you the panzerotto shape. So then we can lift those up off the board and put them right there. So let's do a few more. So you stretch the dough out a little bit like that. Take your little mozzarella balls. I've had these with sausage in them, with fish, with vegetables, of course, eggplant, zucchini. Wipe the edges again. Take it, fold it over, press down, really press well. Get a fork, and then go around that outside edge just to give it that cute little crimped look. So once you have a whole tray full, your oven is on at 375, but you have to let these rise. So you want to cover them for about 20 minutes, and then they go directly in the oven. For panzerotti, you have so many choices. You can make them savory, as we did with the palermitani, or you can make them sweet. So this is a sweet version of the panzerotti. It's called panzerotti di ceci because it uses chickpeas. So this is something that I like to serve just, at Christmas time, or if I'm going to have a special party, because it's a very interesting filling. And all over southern Italy, you have cooks who put very different fillings in. So some will use cocoa with the chickpeas, some will use orange zest, some use lemon zest. It's a very personal thing. But you want to start with a dough. And this is not a yeast dough. The palermitani was a yeast dough. This is a dough that we're going to make with wine and flour and salt and sugar. So it's not a risen dough. So you want to start with 2 cups of unbleached all-purpose flour. We want to add a pinch of salt to this, about 1/3 cup of sugar. Mix that in. And then we have some white wine, and we want a couple tablespoons of olive oil. So I'm just going to add a couple tablespoons of olive oil, extra virgin, with the white wine. Any kind of wine that you like to drink is perfect for this. Put that in our bowl and mix this all around. Now, for a dough like this, we have to let it rest because we're going to actually put this through the pasta machine. So once you get it kind of crumbly like that, then you got to get your hands into it, of course. So get it into a nice dough. You can do this in a food processor too if you didn't want to do it by hand. If you see that your dough is a little dry or it's too wet, well, if it's too wet, you can add a little bit more flour. If it's too dry, you could add a little bit more liquid. But you want something that's soft and easy to use, but not too soft, so that when it goes through the pasta machine, it's all going to stick. I'm going to take that out on my board now and just knead this. So this is going to need about, I would say, 30 minutes or so to sit around. And while it's sitting around, you can make the filling. So you see it's not sticking to my hands, so I know that I have just the right amount of flour in there. Get it smooth, and then put it back in that bowl, cover it, and when you come back to roll this, it's going to be even easier to roll because the gluten will have been relaxed in the flour. So it goes back in the bowl. we're going to set that aside and work on those chickpeas. All right, for the panzerotti di ceci, I said we have to start with chickpeas. So you have options here. So here are dried chickpeas. Actually, these, when I'm in Umbria, I get these, or wherever I am in Italy. So these have to be soaked. So you have to soak them overnight, then boil them. So that's one option. And they really have a really great flavor. Or you could just go to the grocery store and buy yourself a can of chickpeas, drain and rinse them well, because there's a lot of salt in that. And then you can work directly from that. So I've got chickpeas right here in my little food processor because we want to make that into a paste. See how easy that is? So we want to grind that up. And I'm going to put it right here in my bowl. And then with this, we want to flavor this now. We're going to add the zest of an orange. So zest in an orange. This gives a really nice flavor with there's also chocolate in this, and I just think chocolate and orange have such a nice affinity for one another. That's going to be great in this. Okay, well, there's our lemon. So you mix that in. And then we have some cinnamon. Little cinnamon goes in. We have some orange peel. Now, this is homemade orange peel made by my friend Ruth Moore, who painstakingly did this for you. Isn't it beautiful? But, and she did a great job, you can always buy it. So orange peel, candy orange peel goes in. Oh, that's really good, really good. We have some almonds, sliced almonds. And you want 1 egg white. So just the white goes in. Honey. About 1/3 cup of the honey. Mix that all together. But we're not done, because now we have to add chocolate to this. So you mix this up and just set this aside. Oh, that smells so good. And we're going to work on the chocolate. So here we have about 3.5 ounces of semi-sweet chocolate. And you want to break that up. You'll know it's good chocolate when you hear that crackle. See how crispy that breaks? Well, some people don't use the semi-sweet chocolate. Some people use cocoa instead. So I want to break this up a little bit because I'm going to melt this. And that's good enough because it's all going to melt anyway. So in a bowl. And I'm just going to melt it right in the microwave. Here's the chocolate melted in the microwave, see? So now we can add that to the rest of these ingredients. And this is our filling. I just want to lick the bowl, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, so mix this all together. And then you set this aside while you work on the dough, which means that we have to get out our trusty pasta machine. So here's the panzerotti dough that we let rest. Remember, this has got the flour and the wine and the olive oil. And so now it's ready. It's ready to use. So I'm going to roll it as if I was doing pasta, fresh pasta. So start with a small piece and get a little flour down. We just want to flatten this some. Then we're going to put it through the pasta machine. So for something like this, we can get at least 4 dozen, depending on what size cookie cutter you use, what size round you use. You can get at least 4 dozen with a 3-incher. You probably get more depending on how thin you roll the dough. So it's pretty flexible. Look at that dough. Nice. So now we have the pasta machine here, and I have a little motor. Turn it on. And I'm going to start on the widest setting. So if you've done the dough correctly, see, it won't stick. And now we're going to move up a notch. If you find that the dough is sticking, then you're going to add a little bit of flour. But it's very, very springy. Phew, we went cross country. So you see how nice and thin that is, how pretty it looks. So then you get a cookie cutter, something like this, maybe a 3-incher, and just cut out some circles. So you cut out your little circles, and then there's that filling, and look at how it has thickened up. See, look, it just got very thick. So then you put a little dab in the center of each one. I know it sounds like you're going to be here for hours, but actually this goes very fast once you get the hang of it. So a little dab. You can also make these circles bigger. You can make them thicker. A little dab there. A little dab there. A little water around the outsides of these, so that they're going to close. And then fold them over, pinch, see? Pinch them closed. And then with a floured fork, go around the outside. And take them, place them on your little bake sheet. Let me do a couple more. Fold them over. You can press down on that filling a little bit in the center if it's poking up too high. Go around with your little fork. And you keep going like this until you have trays and trays and trays. Your oven is on at 375. And you're going to bake those for about 25, 30 minutes, just so they're nice and lightly browned. The next time you're ready to party, why don't you party like the Italians and make panzerotti? Today we made 2 versions for you, a savory and a sweet. And here's the savory, called panzerotti palermitani. And that was that yeast dough that we filled with tomato and oregano and little balls of mozzarella cheese. And then you can serve them with some extra tomato sauce on the side. They're really a street food, but you can have them anywhere. And then if you want a sweet side of panzerotti, why don't you make these? The panzerotti di ceci. Remember, that was a different kind of dough made with flour and olive oil and sugar and a filling of chickpeas, chocolate, orange zest, almonds. We filled them, we baked them, and we topped them with a little confectioner sugar. And until I see you nella cucina again, I'm Mary Ann Esposito. Ciao.